Top 10 fastest muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online around circuits in 2023. Starting off with number 10, we of course have the Vapid Dominator GTX coming in at about $700,000. The Dominator GTX is one of those cars that has engine resistance. However, despite it having engine resistance on a twisty circuit, the Dominator GTX can seriously put up a fight and even beat some of the cars that are just a little bit ahead of it on this list. The GTX's acceleration is supremely nerfed because of the engine resistance. However, that's not the reason that this thing is even on this list. Pretty much the only reason that the Dominator GTX is even on this list is all to do with the handling. The top speed is pretty pathetic, the acceleration is not very good. However, the handling is quite good. Next up, we have the Bravado Gauntlet Hellfire coming in at about $750,000. This thing is pretty much the polar opposite of the Dominator GTX. This thing has really good acceleration and a pretty high top speed and absolutely horrible handling. Now, that's not to say that I don't love the Gauntlet Hellfire. It's just not really a car that's designed for circuit racing, especially on twistier circuits. However, on long straightaway circuits, this thing is actually pretty good. The acceleration of this vehicle is decent and the top speed is also quite nice. The handling isn't as bad as I'm really saying it is. It's not good, but it's definitely not as bad as it could be. There's definitely some worse handling muscle cars out there. This thing just tends to slide around every single corner, which loses you a little bit of time, and if there's enough corners in a race, you will lose enough time to, well, obviously lose you the race. Next up at number 8, we have the Imponte Ruiner ZZ8 coming in at about $1.3 million. The handling of the Imponte Ruiner is absolutely fantastic. This thing handles super well, albeit it does slide a tiny bit more than the GTX. However, its acceleration and top speed are both higher than the GTX, making it just a little bit more of a competitive vehicle. Still a fantastic car, definitely has some good upgrades, makes a really good engine sound, and I think that it looks fantastic generally. Next up at number 7, we have the Vapid Pisswasser Dominator coming in at a cost of $0 if you are a returning player. I believe it is. If you're not a returning player, I think that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about $200,000 to $300,000. And this thing is a very, well, OG muscle car. Obviously, everybody remembers the OG Dominator that you can steal off of the street. I'm sure for many of you, it was your first car in GTA, like it was for me. The Pisswasser Dominator is just a much more performance-oriented version of the Dominator. And I say much more, but what I really mean is it's slightly better than the regular Dominator. It has a mildly higher top speed, slightly better handling, and very extremely minorly better acceleration. And of course, next up at number 6, we have the Declassy Yosemite coming in at just under $500,000. This is a really interesting car. When you get out of it, the suspension actually lowers, same with when you just come to a complete stop. However, once you start moving, the suspension will actually raise, which is really cool. The Yosemite is kind of an underrated muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online. Well, mostly because it's a truck. That is something to do with it being an underrated muscle car, I suppose. It has somewhat decent handling. It just seems to slide a little bit when you're going around corners very quickly. However, the acceleration and the top speed are absolutely fantastic. So this is definitely going to be another car that is more so suited to the fast muscle car circuits. However, it's not to say it is a bad vehicle at all. It is very good for racing. Next up at number 5, we have the Vapid Dominator GTT. Now, this thing has moved down a little bit since the last time I made one of these videos. This is a very good all-round muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online. This is where this list is going to sort of get a little bit better. The Dominator GTT is a fantastic muscle car. This thing has very good handling, very good acceleration, and a pretty high top speed. Now, the last time that I made a video talking about the Dominator GTT, it had just been nerfed from the Contract DLC. However, with the release of the Criminal Enterprises DLC, it actually got slightly buffed, so it's back near where it used to be when the Los Santos Tuners DLC released. Definitely one of the better cars for racing in Grand Theft Auto Online. Like I said, obviously this is placed at number 5. This is the 5th fastest muscle car in the entire game. Anyway guys, that's it for the Dominator GTT at number 5. Let's move on to number 4. The Vapid Clique coming in at number 4 for about $900,000. Now, the Vapid Clique is formerly the fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing actually had a bit of a reign of terror in GTA for a number of years. This was the fastest muscle car in the entire game because it has something that a lot of the other muscle cars don't have, and that is extremely good handling. At number 3, we have the Vapid Dominator ASP from the Tuners DLC, coming in at between $1.3 million if you have the trade price unlocked and $1.8 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. This thing is still the third fastest muscle car in the entire game. And the second fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online is the Declassy Vigoro ZX, coming in at just under $2 million. Now, there are a couple things that you should know about the Vigoro ZX. I am on the PC version, which means we do not have the HSW upgrade on the PC, which means that this thing is the second fastest muscle car. However, there's a lot of weird sort of technicalities that we're going to go over with this thing and the car at number 1, and I will explain it all, and hopefully it will make sense to you guys. The Vigoro ZX on PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 is the second fastest muscle car in the entire game. However, if you're on the Xbox Series S or X or the PS5 and you have the HSW upgrade on this thing, it is a lot closer to the number 1 spot than it is on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. The fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online still to this day is the Bravado Buffalo STX, coming in at $1.6 million if you have the trade price, or $2.1 million if you do not have the trade price. The STX is simply superior than the Vigoro ZX in a lot of ways, mostly regarding the handling. The Vigoro definitely has pretty good handling, but nothing compared to the Bravado Buffalo STX. This thing's handling is absolutely unrivaled in the muscle car category. It pretty much dominates in terms of handling, and on twisty circuits, this thing will beat a Vigoro ZX even with the HSW upgrade, just because of how competitive it is due to its handling.